Alright, so up on the lift today I have my 2005 KLR650, and my mission today is to get some more information about what the bike is doing. So I have a Trail Tech TTO digital temperature gauge for this thing that I'm going to put on this bike in conjunction with the stock needle type, the sweeping gauge. I want to mount it about right here, and I want to actually just do some comparison of how the bike is actually running, because the stock gauge leaves a little bit to be desired as far as accuracy and actually having numbers to go by to know exactly how hot or cool this bike is running. So in this video what we're going to be doing is installing this, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how to do that starting now. Okay, as you see, I have this thing torn down, and I have it torn down a little bit further than some of you may need to, but I went ahead and took my front fairing off because I'm also doing a clutch cable right now, but that's not something you need to do, so don't worry about that. I did have to pull off my skid plate to access this bolt here, and this is the drain for the actual cooling system, which we have to drain to not make a mess whenever we pull this upper radiator hose off. So let me kind of flip the mic around and I'll walk you through exactly what we're going to do. Now, taking a look at the stock cooling system, you can see our water pump here, and this marking here, it says up to the cylinder, so this hose runs up to the front of the cylinder here, gets circulated around, picks up temperature, and then draws it out of the engine, and it exits through your thermostat housing here, runs up to your upper radiator hose, cooled through the radiator, and comes back down and exits into the water pump. So our factory setup has its sensor placed right here in the cylinder head, and that is our closest point here to get the same reading. So I want to place this sensor within the upper radiator hose, and I'm thinking kind of tucked way back here where you can't see it. I don't know if I want to put it right here because that might have a problem interfering with the tank. Another potential location might be right here in this vertical section. That might be a decent spot to remove, cut, and install the sensor. I know the tank doesn't have anything that fits right here, so that might be another spot, but overall it shouldn't be too hard. And then this gauge setup is completely self-contained. It runs off a battery. You can see this thing is actually working right now, and there's no external powering that we have to do with this, so we just run our cable up to the gauge, and then we'll end up putting it about right here. And it's really simple. I've used these on many bikes and I really like them. They're really affordable. I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that. It's just a quality product. So nice and simple, clean gauge, does what you need it to. Now, a couple of you eagle-eye viewers might notice my fan here. This is actually from a Ducati 848, and I made this a bolt-on option for the most part. So I just had to kind of open up a couple little spots on the fan motor here for the screws, and I got it to fit in the factory spot. I have it wired on an override. Moves a lot of air, keeps it cool. But if you guys are interested in seeing a video on that, I'll link one above, as I did an install video for it. Alright, let's go ahead and get this kit open and I'll show you everything it comes with, and we'll begin the install process. So flip this open. It has a quick guide on installing it here. 2 hose clamps, adhesive pad, a couple screws for the actual gauge itself. This is the sensor. It's a billet aluminum piece. This one is 22mm for the KLR650. They sell this in a variety of different sizes. So the sensor here is just fed in through the top. Coolant passes by the sensor in there, gives you the reading. Nice thin, flexible line. These are JWPM connectors here. And it just plugs straight into the actual gauge. See the size of this thing here. And then you can program your high points, as well as, of course, if you want it in Fahrenheit or Celsius. So that's pretty much it. Now, after we got the bike torn down, I need to start draining my coolant. So I have a clean container here because I'm planning on reusing this. I changed this not that long ago, so I know the coolant itself is good. And then right now it's just kind of dribbling. So I'm going to crack the actual radiator cap loose, and it will start flowing. It's not like we have to get every drop out of this thing. As long as the upper radiator hose is clear, we're fine. Now, looking at the hose, I feel like this is going to be the best spot for this actual sensor. Takes up a little bit more space as far as the outside diameter, but once that's out of the way, like, we should have a good bit of room here, and it's pretty accessible. Now, to actually mount this, you are going to have to, of course, cut the radiator hose and remove this distance. Now, this is 3/4 of an inch wide, so we're going to remove 3/4 of an inch worth of radiator hose. So right now we're just kind of eyeballing it. That might be our upper mark there. We'll measure down 3/4 of an inch, get another mark. We have our spot there. Alright, next up we can start loosening our upper radiator hose clamps. So now we can go ahead and remove the hose. We'll do an inspection while it's off. Then we can cut the hose, install the sensor, and put everything back on. Alright, back on the bench here. I went ahead and just took a paint marker and redid the markings there because I wiped off the hose, so kind of cleaned off the marks. But the hose is going to sit like this. I'm going to clock our sensor about like that. Now, before you go ahead and go any further, you want to make sure that this is the right size for this hose, which it is. Again, this is 22 millimeter. So for you guys with like CX500 Hondas and stuff, this is the one you want. Fun fact. But I'm going to cut this now, and what I'll use is a pair of aviation snips. Trying to determine where I want to clock these things. Probably go towards the inside. Install the sensor. And now we can tighten this back up. Now they're using a 7 millimeter on these. Alright, I'm going to reinstall the hose, and then up top we'll do it on the bike where we put the upper hose on and clamp that down. Alright, now we can install the top section of the hose here. Now, make sure we get that in the right location. Rotate that a little bit more. I think that'll be where we want it. that. I did remove this real quick just to make it easier to see. That back on. And that is pretty much installed. Now it's time to actually run the wire here. Now it's important that you don't have any kind of tension on this. You don't want it pulling. So leave yourself a little bit extra. I can go ahead and just like kind of loop it like that. And then I'm just going to run it back up through this natural harness routing point. Now this is just a couple 8mm bolts. So I'm going to take this plate off, run the wire up through that, and then come right back. Now this extra zip tie is also holding my fan override switch. So I'm just going to put another zip tie on this. Remove this one. Keep it nice and clean. Just like that. Alright, now we got the factory gauges off this thing and it's time to mount our digital unit. Now, where I would like to put this is about right here. And the way I'm thinking about doing that is just a piece of angle iron. And between screwing it and putting adhesive on here, I'd like to mount it about right there. And before I do that, I need to make sure we don't have anything directly behind this. So I'm going to remove these two screws and see kind of what's back here, and if we can just kind of mount it up and then put it all back together, that'd be cool. So let's kind of jump right into that. Alright, now we roll this thing back. No, just kidding. So this is the area of concern right here, and there's nothing immediately behind it. Now we don't want to go sinking a drill bit really far through it, but we know that we're safe to work kind of within this area. But while we're here, I can go ahead and clean the dust off of these things and get it back together. I think we have just enough room to get a piece of hardware in here, so I'm going to open it up to clear a 5mm. Commit. And you see the white speck right there. That's this top edge. Just getting ready to cover that up. Now right here and right here, I have two little black marks. and that is just taking the marker right where they come through those holes in the black piece and just marking where that interference will be. Now all I'm going to do is just take my Dremel and just clearance this down a little bit. I think we should be fine with the actual gauge plaque. We'll just take out about half the head of the screw there, and I think we'll have plenty of room. So I'm going to tape over this, just kind of get all that, kind of protect it a little bit, and then work on that. Looks like we have just enough room to get the nuts on that, and we'll be good. Now, I mentioned I'm going to put an adhesive on the back side of this just to give it some extra protection. That way it will help with vibration and whatnot. This is a KLR, everything falls off, so I'm going to make sure we have double redundancy. Obviously JB Weld is probably a little overkill right now, but I'm out of just regular Permatex, so this is what I got. This is what we're going to use. Okay, that is ready to go. Alright, we are ready. There it is. Alright, next up is to actually adhere this to our little mount we made. So we have the included adhesive pad. So I'm going to take a little acetone, wipe off this section, wipe off the back of the gauge. They also include these little caps for the end here if you're not using mounting hardware. So go ahead and utilize these. There we have it. Okay, so we have the section of the harness coming up actually from the sensor itself, and then we have the harness section from the gauge. So these are going to meet right here, of course. Now there is a cover that fits over this, like so. And the idea is that I'm going to run this over the top like that. They're going to plug in just out of sight, and then I'm going to have to loop this about like so. Loop it about one time to take up the extra slack. Just plug them in. These are waterproof, they're nice. Give it one loop. Cut our excess off, and then that will live back there peacefully. Alright, I've got the fairing back on this thing. All the wiring is tidied up. We have our turn signals plugged back in. And I did go ahead and refill all the coolant that we took out of this thing and then just topped it off as necessary. So now it's time to put the tank back on this thing. We'll fire it up and I'll show you exactly how the gauge reads. Should have done this with an empty tank. Of course, I'm tightening the seat bolts through some access holes that I drilled, meaning I can take the seat off without having to completely de-gear whenever I have my side bags on this thing. Just makes it a little easier on the trail. Works perfect. So real simple install. I know I probably went a little bit farther than a lot of people with just making this little bracket for the front and the way I tied it in, but you get the idea. So this is a great little gauge for any kind of liquid cooled bike that you have. Non-intrusive, and the fact that it doesn't have any kind of like, you know, tied in power to the bike is really big. So anyway, I'm going to have another video on comparing the temperatures that you're going to read on this with the stock gauge. So stick around for that. Whenever that video goes up, I'll have it linked above. Now, of course, I'll have this linked in the description, but if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'll be sure to get right back to you. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.